Hello everyone, this is Josh coming to you from my iPhone. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy out there, productive and active, hopefully. But with quarantine, we've got a lot of time on our hands, and I think that's the perfect time to catch up on some movies you may have missed, expand your knowledge of film, try some movies you normally wouldn't see. And so today I'm going to be going over a highlight of what streaming services have to offer, like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Disney Plus. Hopefully you'll find a couple suggestions and try them out. To kick off Netflix, our first film is The Perks of Being a Wallflower, directed by Steven Chbosky, based off of his best-selling novel. Now, this movie has a great cast: Logan Lerman, Emma Watson, Ezra Miller. It's really a great high school movie. It's a touching exploration about a loner who's embraced by two older high school students. So if you're missing high school like me, this is a great way to get back into it. And it's a really touching exploration on mental health. And it's just a really heartwarming story, so I do recommend The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Next up, we have The Social Network, directed by David Fincher. Now, I went more in depth on this movie in, I believe, our December issue. I did a little write-up about it. But this movie is more topical than ever, even though it came out in 2010. It explores the creation of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, that whole founding story, sort of an origin story, if you will. And in my opinion, it is one of the best films of the 2010s. It's very well crafted, well acted. Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield, just a very stacked cast. The dialogue is very quippy. It's just a gripping drama. I'd recommend it for the whole family. I find it fascinating. It's really interesting, and it'll grip you from start to finish. So yeah, check out The Social Network. Moving right along, we have Roma, directed by Alfonso Cuarón. This movie won Best Foreign Film at the Oscars 2 years ago. It's just a really gripping look at political and social turmoil within Mexico I think, during the 60s. It's a really well-crafted masterpiece. Yeah, nothing else to say. Check it out. Now, this is for those of you looking for an action-packed movie. I'd like to recommend Drive, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, starring Ryan Gosling. It's about a Hollywood stuntman who just enters a world of crime. It's very entertaining, well shot, the cinematography is gorgeous, and I would recommend it. Next up is our first animated feature on this list, and that would be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It won Best Animated Feature 2 years ago at the Oscars. It's one of my favorite Spider-Man movies in general, so if you're a comic book fan, go for it. It's a very inventive way of approaching animation. They play around with tons of different art styles. This is the definition of family-friendly fun, and it's just it's a joy to watch, honestly. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Another action-packed comedy would be Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, directed by Edgar Wright. This movie, I've seen it countless times now. It's got Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Anna Kendrick, Jason Schwartzman. Just a really great cast. It's a lot of fun, based off of a comic series, which takes inspiration from video game styles. So if you're really into pop culture, definitely check out Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Rounding out our Netflix segment, I'd like to highlight 3 movies by Noah Baumbach, one of my favorite directors. First up, we have his debut, Kicking and Screaming. This is about a group of college graduates with really no clue what to do with their lives. It's aimless to a point, so if it's light on plot, if you're not into that, then that's fine. You don't have to watch this one. But it's a really insightful look into the 90s postgraduate generation. Next up, we have The Squid and the Whale. This is a family drama about a divorced family. It's a really raw look into family dynamics, so if you're into that, I'd recommend The Squid and the Whale. And lastly is one of my favorite movies, Frances Ha. This is one of my comfort movies. It's about a 20-something-year-old dancer living in New York City, really just trying to figure out her life. And if you're ever looking for a pick-me-up, yes, go with Frances Ha. It's got a great score. Moving on to Amazon Prime, I'd like to highlight a couple movies by the distribution company A24. As you can see, I'm repping their merch right there. They make tons of great movies, so just search A24, pop one in, and if it's by them, it's going to be pretty good. But I'd like to start it off with 8th Grade, directed by Bo Burnham and starring LCK Fisher. Now, this movie is about an 8th grader who's socially awkward, deals with anxiety, and it's just tracking her last week of 8th grade. So if you're missing middle school or your high school days, this will bring you back. At times it's cringe-inducing, but that's kind of what 8th grade is. So this movie is a very realistic portrayal of 8th grade or high school, just a relatable movie about adolescence. Next up in that same vein is Lady Bird, directed by Greta Gerwig, 2017, starring Saoirse Ronan. Now, most of you have probably heard about it. A lot of you have probably seen it. This movie was very popular, was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars a few years ago. This movie is about a girl named Lady Bird in her last year of high school, so senior year for all those seniors out there missing like prom and graduation. This movie's got you covered. I know it's not the same, but if it helps you out, I definitely recommend Lady Bird. It's very funny. This next movie is Inside Llewyn Davis by Joel and Ethan Coen, the Coen brothers. They're very famous within Hollywood, have made tons of great movies. This movie is about a folk singer named Llewyn Davis who lives in Greenwich Village during the 60s, around the time that Bob Dylan started to revitalize the folk scene. And it's a very sad story about a singer who never quite makes it in a way. So all of you aspiring singers, musicians, it's a very raw look into what the music industry is like. The cinematography is gorgeous. I love the songs. I have them on my Spotify playlist. And this is just a very, very good movie. Lastly, for Amazon Prime, I'd like to recommend Cold War, directed by Paweł Pawlikowski. This was nominated for Best Foreign Feature a couple years ago at the Oscars. If you've seen the new Star is Born with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, it's like this, but in Polish. It's got gorgeous black and white cinematography. It's a very heartbreaking story. It's a romance set during the Cold War, hence the title. It takes place over the span of 15 years. So it's just a really intimate look at a relationship. Yeah, I'd recommend Cold War. Moving on to Hulu, I'd like to start with a family movie. The Lego Movie 2, the second part. Now, is it as good as the first Lego movie? Definitely not. It feels like the innovation of the first movie, they never quite reached that height, but this is a worthy sequel to such a great movie. It's a blast. It's got some really catchy songs that'll be stuck in your head for a while. Got a great cast. Just really entertaining, and some of the jokes are really great for a family movie. Recommend the Lego Movie 2. Next up is another high school movie. That would have to be the comedy Booksmart. Now, if you've seen Superbad, this is just like that, but the female version. It's got very funny jokes and also a very heartwarming storyline. So if you're in for a high school comedy, I would definitely recommend Booksmart. Now, I don't have the Blu-rays for these next two movies, but on Hulu, I would like to recommend Parasite and Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Those are two foreign films, very great. I'm sure you've heard about Parasite. It made history, being the first international film to win Best Picture at the Oscars this past year. It's very well crafted, and Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a stirring romance movie, so I would recommend both of those if you're into foreign features, and if not, these are a great place to start. Now for Disney Plus, I'm sure you're all familiar with Disney's movies, the Marvel movies, Star Wars movies, so I don't want to repeat movies that I'm sure you've already seen or heard about. They're all great. I definitely recommend Disney Plus. Their content is phenomenal. But just to highlight a few Marvel movies that you may have missed, or just some of my favorites from the whole MCU, I'd recommend Guardians of the Galaxy. Both of them. The second one I feel like isn't as good as the first, but the first, I love the soundtrack. It's really entertaining, and it's very different from the rest of the MCU. I'd also like to recommend Captain America: The Winter Soldier, known as probably the best Captain America movie. It reminds me of like a World War II or a Cold War spy thriller. It has a very unique style to it, and it's very gripping. I'd also like to recommend Inside Out, probably my favorite Disney movie, a very touching exploration on emotions and how they affect the human body, the human brain. It's just a very, very heartwarming look, and it gives you depth that you see with most Pixar movies, but you never quite reach the height of Inside Out, in my opinion. That's why it's one of my favorites. And another one I would like to recommend is Free Solo. It's actually a documentary about a man who ends up climbing mountains without a harness. I had the chance to see it on the IMAX on the big screen, but this will have you holding your breath from start to finish. It's a documentary about, his name is Alex Honnold, and it's just really jaw-dropping to see him climbing these vast landscapes without a harness, so I definitely recommend Free Solo. I'd like to end the video off by recommending a few other streaming services if you're tired of the selection on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Disney Plus. If you're just looking for a change of pace, I'd also recommend Canopy. I believe you get access to Canopy with a library card. So you just put in your library card and your library should give you access to the wide variety of movies on Canopy. I believe they have A24 movies, bunch of other popular movies, some independent films. So if you're looking for a different selection, go with Canopy. And I'd like to finish off with my favorite streaming service, the Criterion Channel. I believe it's $90 a year, but you can sign up for a 30-day free trial. So if you're just looking for some stuff to binge during quarantine, go for that. It's got a lot of classics, has some Stanley Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock. It's got some Scorsese movies like Taxi Driver. So maybe movies that you can watch with your parents. Like, this is what they've grown up with. So I definitely recommend the Criterion Channel if you're looking to broaden your horizons. Well, that's it from me. I hope you all stay safe. Hope you enjoyed the video. And remember to social distance. And I hope to see you all sometime soon.